Well, welcome along to Donington Park, everybody. It's round 4 of the 2024 Ferrari Challenge, race 7 of the championship season coming up for you in just a few moments' time. The cars will be released from the pit lane and make their way out onto this iconic Donington Park National Circuit. 1.979 miles, a 30-minute race plus an extra lap thereafter in what are still cloudy conditions here. Still a nice warm ambient temperature. It still really does feel like summer out there. There's a very light breeze, but it's a warm breeze, which means that for the drivers, as we've alluded to, if you joined us for either free practice earlier on or for qualifying, pretty much ideal conditions. Track temperature has still risen a bit more. It was 31 degrees, wasn't it, for qualifying? It's now 32 degrees out there, the track temperature. The air temperature, a very, very enjoyable 23 degrees. So looking forward to this one. So the cars started to make their way out onto the circuit. Let's look back at some of the highlights from qualifying. So apologies, the highlights we were seeing now were from the Snetterton rounds, which took place earlier on over the course of the season. The 8th and 9th of June is when we're in Norfolk. The Donington highlights we'll probably bring to you maybe tomorrow over the course of qualifying and, of course, the race that will have taking place tomorrow as well. So cars making their way out onto the circuit in advance of this 7th race of the season. But before we start to build up the anticipation ahead of round 4, race 7 of the season, let's get one of our drivers to show us around the Ferrari 488 Challenge Evo spec car. What better person to do that than Pranav Vangala?
My name's Pranav Vangala. I'm one of the UK Challenge drivers here in the Trofeo Pirelli class. And I'm here on this partly cloudy morning in Snetterton to tell you a little bit about my race machine this year, the number 29 Ferrari 488 Challenge Evo. I mean, first of all, probably worth saying, isn't it such a pretty thing? It's obviously loosely based on the road car, the regular 488 GTB. Just to highlight the outside, some of the aerodynamic bits that come with the Evo kit, the front splitter, the dive planes, the little fins underneath the wing mirror, and then of course, that giant rear wing on the back. As we come around the side of the car, you'll notice first of all at the front, the Pirelli P0 tyres. These are regulation for the championship. Incredibly sticky, 2 sets of slicks per weekend, so you do need to be conscious of how you're using them between qualifying and the race. And then as we move into the inside, you'll see that it's completely different to the road car. This is where the starkest differences are. I mean, first of all, there's no creature comforts in this whatsoever. You do have air conditioning because it gets quite hot in there during a race. However, the door cards have been completely replaced with these carbon fiber items, as has much of the dash trim. It's probably also worth noting the host of safety features, including these 6-point harnesses, full roll cage that you have to clamber over to get in, safety netting on either side of the seats, and a plumbed-in fire extinguisher system. The other thing you'll see is that the steering wheel and the dash have been completely switched out. The steering wheel is akin to something that you might find on a GT3 car or even resemble an F1 car loosely. We have 2 different traction control settings, again separate to the road car. One for low speed intervention, one for sort of late intervention. Each has 4 settings, and then similarly the ABS has 4 settings. It's just a lot more customizable and focused on getting the most out of the car in challenging and changing conditions. Under the cover here is the heart of the car, the 670 horsepower twin-turbo V8, which is mated to a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission. I think it's worth noting that the power this produces is quite similar to the road car, but of course, given the extra grip and aerodynamics of this vehicle, you can really put it down through a circuit much more effectively. That said, despite all the aero, it still gets up to plenty of speed on the back of the Bentley straight here. You'll see yourself touching 250, if not more, kilometers an hour. So that was a quick tour and review of my Ferrari 488 Challenge Evo. It's been a privilege to drive the car this season. I feel incredibly lucky, and I can't wait to hop in it in a couple of hours and go racing.
Well, Pranav Vangala won't have to wait a couple of hours on this occasion because he has already brought his car up into position on the outside of the front row of the grid. Pranav has yet to win a race so far this year. He's had a couple of seconds, he's had a couple of thirds. Adam Weller joins me in the commentary box. Adam, looking forward to this one as we get the 7th race of the season underway.
Very much looking forward to seeing what happens here at Donington. First time we've been here in 2 years, and I really appreciated that look as well with Pranav Vangala at the Ferrari 488 Challenge Evo. This will more than likely be the final full year for the Ferrari 488 Challenge Evo in a Ferrari Challenge competition, which will end the V8 era of Ferrari Challenge that began all the way in 1992. The 296, of course, is a V6.
Yep, so that's it from Adam and I for the moment. Let's go down onto the grid and soak up some of the action. Amanda Stretton is down there with Dave Richardson.
I am indeed, yes. Tension is mounting here on the grid. People are starting to come on. And I have to say, I might actually get him to turn around because, oh God. Peter Hunter never fails to disappoint. But just look how busy it is. We've got so many people here on the grid. Peter, it's lovely to see you looking cheerful, happy.
Last place, love it. Love it. Love coming last.
But you're looking forward to this?
Yes.
We're going to see great things in the race?
Yes.
Brilliant.
Really
Good.
are.
That's what we want to hear. So yes, tension is rising down here. Everybody's getting ready. I'm just going to keep talking. You can titter away to yourself. Tension is rising down here, and it's a lovely, busy pit lane here at Donington. Donington is a really tricky track for a lot of the guys to get used to. They haven't actually raced here for a couple of years, isn't that right?
Well, you're absolutely right, yes. And so refamiliarisation for those that have been here before, of course, baptism of fire for those that haven't. I have to say, Amanda, your bravery in terms of taking on Peter Hunter knows no bounds. After a previous incarnation, I didn't think you would ever do that. Come on, what's your opinion of the Hemandrai Pillai car alongside us here to the left-hand side? I love the colour scheme. Is it one of your liking too?
It is. And when I actually spoke to him, when he debuted this car at Snetterton, I said to him, why? What made you change the colour? I mean, it was green. It was quite distinctive before. Yes. It's even more distinctive now, and he just said he liked it.
Well,
so it's like, that's a good enough reason.
Here is Darren, look, and his loyal and trusty driver coach steps out of the way there. Charles is there to look after him. I'm just going to steam in and just have a word with Darren just before we get underway. Darren, last thing in the world you need is me speaking to you just ahead of the start of the race. How you feeling?
Feeling good, thanks. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Go well, my friend. There you go. Well done, Darren. Great to talk to him on the grid as well as we continue on our way, Amanda. And I'm glad you like the Hemandrai car.
Well, I do. I think it's really nice. Now, look, qualifying has been really interesting because we've seen, certainly in the Copa Shell class, a bit of a switch around. Robert Rees has been so dominant, was struggling, and so we've sort of got a little bit of a reshuffle in this part of the grid, haven't we? And, of course, Mike Dewhurst, who, again, has been on terrific form for the last couple of rounds, again, ended up with a few problems. Where is he?
Yes, that's a slight curtain. Is it a comfort break for Mike? Yeah, okay, yeah. So Mike is missing.
Mike is missing.
I'm so tempted
to get it.
Yeah, but I would need to be sure. Go on, Amanda Stretton. Insult me still further, why don't you?
You won't get in unless the steering wheel's on.
Yeah. Dig yourself out of that one, why don't you? Also someone that's shown so much promise this season, and, you know, when you consider a rookie driver to have achieved what Steve Dobson has achieved, it's remarkable.
Yeah, and he seems to be sort of gaining pace, gaining confidence as well, and really going from strength to strength. Why are you laughing? Oh, here he is.
Do come along, Mr. Dewhurst. We were waiting for you. You know, I was so tempted to jump into your car here, and Amanda Stretton, rotten thing that she is, said, you'd never get in it, Dave.
Well, I could try.
Oh, thanks, Mike.
It's a bit high, but you'll be all right.
Go well in the race, friend. Well done, Mike Dewhurst. Great to see Mike back at his best because, of course, he was racing when he felt more than, well, certainly less than 100%, and that must be so difficult.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, to put in the performances that he did was really impressive. One guy I'm going to be looking out for is Robert Rees. He's been leading the Copa Shell class, qualified, I think he's second or third, well, I'm trying to count now, in the class. really wasn't going particularly well in qualifying, just said he was overdriving really. But generally what we've seen from Robert is really strong performances in the race. So he is a guy who really knows how to make his way through the traffic and sort of gain some places. But he looks like he's deep in conversation, so I won't jump in there.
You know, we were talking about baptisms of fire just a few moments ago. Lee Frost, to our right-hand side here, who is driving the championship-winning car, is in for Lucky Kera. Lucky apparently will be in the car tomorrow, but Lee is going to race it today. Now, I'm not going to really upset him by talking to him, but just want to wish you well, Lee. Good luck to you, my friend. And yeah, where he's put that car could be something of a danger man from there, I would suggest, Amanda. And wow, that came as a surprise to all of us this morning because it was completely and totally unexpected.
No, exactly. We had no idea that he was going to be jumping in, and I wonder when he found out as well. Cause,
If you're looking for entertaining at lunchtime, I have to say, try and sit at the dining table with these two because I have had the most entertaining lunch today with Jamie, who has told me things that I've never known before.
The things that racing drivers know that are not for public broadcast.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic.
But you learnt a valuable lesson.
I did indeed learn a valuable
exactly.
lesson.
One that will live with you and you will not forget.
Yes, indeed it will.
But now we're getting to the sharp end of the grid, and this is going to be interesting because this is the pole man in Copa-Shell, Gary Redman, going really well in his session. Alongside him, Andrew Morrow. Now, Andrew, only third, he's now not leading the championship because, of course, Gilbert Yates, who has put the car on pole position, gets that extra point, which now means he's leading the championship.
Yes, and the thing is, I mean, if I'm honest with you, Andrew makes it hard for himself. And the reason he makes it hard for himself is because he absolutely loves motor racing. Not only does he race here in the Ferrari Challenge in the UK, but races in the Ferrari Challenge in Europe as well, where, may I say, he took victory last time out, his first win in the European season. So you and I would think, well, no, I would think jumping from one car to another would be quite easy because, of course, they're racing the 296 Challenge car in Europe, which will be the car in the UK next year.
Yep.
But actually, it's like chalk and cheese, Andrew tells me, to jump from one car to another. So fair play to him. Yes, he's qualified out of position. He needs to do some overtaking. That's going to be jolly difficult for him.
It will. In fact, I was talking to him after qualifying about the challenges of jumping from the 296 and back into this challenge car. And he said it's just so different. The seating position is different, the brakes are different, the steering is different, the way the car handles is different. And it's really much more of a challenge than you would expect to just change mindset to jump from one car into the next.
Do you think he will have been really put on the back foot because not only has he been out-qualified by Gilbert Yates, but also by Pranav Vangala?
I think that will have come as a surprise.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that would have been probably the most challenging thing to get your head around just as you go into the race. But I mean, we have seen just what a consistent driver Andrew is. Pranav is still sort of in the early stages, so we'll see what happens with him. But yeah, Andrew Morrow is a very consistent racer, so I think over the course of the half-hour race plus lap that they're going to be undertaking very shortly, I would not be surprised if we see a race between these two.
A testament to these drivers, Amanda, which perhaps we don't talk often enough, is just 3 years ago, this young man hadn't sat in a racing car. Pranav Vangala, new into the Ferrari Challenge this year. I mean, that's remarkable and just proves how forgiving these cars are for racing drivers to get into and learn their craft.
Forgiving and also really solid, because the way the whole structure of the championship with the driver coaches and with the whole program to get you onto the track in the first place, it really gets people lined up ready to actually sit on historic circuits like this one here at Donington, looking down there towards the first corner at Redgate, getting ready to go racing.
Now, we've had something of a competition here in the UK to see how long Dave can leave it before being hustled off the grid in a wheelbarrow by the race officials. I'm not going to do that this time. From Amanda and from myself, grid side, let's go up to our race control and commentary team of Adam Weller, and here is Mark Werrell.
Thank you, Dave Richardson. Thank you, Amanda Stretton, down there on the grid. We are pretty much ready to go then with the formation lap for this 7th race of the 2024 championship season. Beautifully poised after what has been a brilliant couple of racing weekends. Gilbert Yates leads the championship by just a single point, now on 71 points after qualifying, pick up the extra point for pole position from Andrew Morrow, who is on 70, and Pranav Vangala is 3rd on 60 points. Amandra Pillai is 4th, ahead of Tom Fleming, who is an absentee. John Dillon, AJ Lett and Lee Frost are the top 8 in Trofeo Pirelli. As for Copa Shell, well, in Copa Shell, there's a slightly larger gap in terms of who's at the top of the Copa Shell championship standings. Robert Rees leads by 11 points in Copa Shell from Mike Dewhurst, and Gary Redman, having secured his 3rd pole position on the trot, is there in 3rd. Peter Hunter, Steve Dobson and Darren Howell are the top 6 in Copa Shell. So for Gary Redman, he did say hasn't as yet managed to convert one of those 3 pole positions to a race win, but he's getting ever closer. Let's guide you through the grid then, the way that they line up. Gilbert Yates for Charles Hurst lines up on pole position with Pranav Vangala for HRO in alongside, and it's Andrew Morrow for Charles Hurst alongside the Great Paul Nottingham car of Gary Redman, who is on pole position, remember, for Copa Shell. Row 3 of the grid, Lee Frost for Great Paul Birmingham alongside the Dick Lovett Swindon car of Robert Rees, and it's his teammate Mike Dewhurst that lines up alongside another of one of the cars from Dick Lovett Swindon, Steve Dobson, on row number 4. Row 5 of the grid, on the inside of the 5th row of the grid, is Darren Howell alongside Amandra Pillai, who had a bit of a struggle in qualifying, as did Peter Hunter, who will line up at the tail end of the field. So they're all just trying to build that little last bit of temperature into their control Pirelli tyres around the Donington Park National Circuit, and in a few moments' time we'll be getting race 7 of the championship season, round 4, underway. So the car's just heading out of Coppice Corner now. Remember, it's the red and the Dayglow car of Gilbert Yates that sits there on pole position. 5 back-to-back pole positions now for Gilbert Yates, with Pranav Vangala alongside him. Remember, he's had a couple of seconds so far this year in the green car, but he hasn't had a win just as yet. And watch out, don't rule out, as ever, the reigning champion Andrew Morrow. Keep an eye on what's going on in Copa Shell as well, which is being headed by the grey car that starts on the 2nd row of the grid of Gary Redman. Lights are on the gantry, and as the lights flash their way out now, it looks as though we're almost 3 wide for what will be 3rd, 4th and 5th position. There's a little bit of contact further back as a couple of cars rub against each other. I think that was Robert Rees alongside Steve Dobson, and Robert Rees has done what Robert Rees does all season. There's contact, there's a spin. Mike Dewhurst gets tangled up with Darren Howell, and backwards is the pole sitter from Copa Shell, which is Gary Redman. So 1 car in the gravel trap at Redgate Corner, 2 cars with damage, 1 pointing in the right direction, 1 pointing in the wrong direction. I fear that might bring about a safety car, Adam Weller.
I believe it was Gary Redman and Robert Rees that made that contact going towards the first corner. Robert Rees continues on, but yes, to your point, that could well be a safety car. Howell has got going. Redman has got going, but I don't think Mike Dewhurst's car will be moving again. Let's wait and see. The pack heads up towards Coppice.
Yeah, well, Robert Rees has, over the course of the last few races, not qualified well, but has really had stellar first laps. Well, he got a good first lap there, but unfortunately it's not going to count for a great deal, because it's not going to be a safety car, it is going to be a red flag, and that's largely a result of Mike Dewhurst's car being stricken just on the very edge of the circuit up at Redgate Corner. But there's also bits of carbon fibre bodywork on the track, and there's also, by the look of things, some coolant or some water or something that's been deposited by one of the other cars that was involved. So red flags come out. All the drivers look to be absolutely fine. It was just, it was a close start, wasn't it? There was that little bit of contact on the run up towards Redgate Corner between Gary Redman and the fast starting Robert Rees, and then there was a bit of a concertina. I think Gary Redman, either them, had a bit of contact or lost the tail end of the car, and unfortunately, as he rotated, there were another couple of cars that got collected. I think we might just be able to pick up on a replay. So there's original contract, right? It was Pranav Vangala that originally made contact with Robert Rees, the green car. They bounced off each other without too much of a problem. And what happened to Gary Redman? Well, the answer is that Darren Howell was pretty much up the inside of him. Gary Redman tried to close the door. There wasn't enough of a gap, and unfortunately he got tangled up. Mike Dewhurst got tangled up, and Peter Hunter, the former rally driver, had to call on all of those former skills, didn't he? He rally-crossed his way through the gravel trap to avoid it all.
Yes, he really did. His knowledge of Group B rally cars coming in clutch on that occasion. Apologies then. Yes, it was Pranav Van Gala with Robert Rees. I think that was a concertina of several different things at once. Robert Rees had a really good start. Pranav Van Gala didn't really get out of the blocks in time, and everyone just kind of ended up 3, as you said, as we called the start, 3, almost 4 wide, and sometimes that just doesn't go.
I think Peter Hunter has not got away with it either, because as he stopped on the grid, there's a huge patch of coolant that's deposited itself there, and I do wonder if he might have a front right-hand puncture as well, because the car looks slightly lower on the front right-hand corner. Now, Peter is edging forward to take up his starting position, but the officials have now pointed to the line of coolant that's depositing itself on the circuit, and that probably means that Peter Hunter is not going to be able to restart this one. Water would evaporate nice and quickly. Coolant takes a lot longer to evaporate and is very slippy, so I suspect that poor old Peter Hunter is also going to need some attention. His driver coach, which is Benny Simonson, heading up towards him, but it does look as though Peter Hunter is out of the race. Mike Dewhurst is out of the race, and we'll have to wait and see what happens to the other two.
So Gary Redman and Howell are in the pit lane. Hunter, as you said, has some issues. Robert Rees, the one who went airborne, the championship leader, his car seems to be all right. I understand, though, we might be able to get some insights from downstairs.
Well, didn't expect to be doing 2 grid walks this early on, Amanda. Of course, always, motor racing can be beautiful. It can also be brutal as well, and that opening lap incident means that we have got a red flag.
It does. Unfortunate. I don't think anyone's going to be injured, or no one's actually hurt from it, but it's just annoying. There's a bit of tidying up to do down at Redgate. We can see the recovery vehicles down there as well, and just picking up all the debris and clearing the track of the gravel as well. But it just goes to show, everybody's focused, everybody's trying to get round the corner with the optimum line, and 3-4 cars don't go into one place, and that's really what we saw there.
Yeah, it was one of those classic sort of incidents where you're trying to squeeze too much metal into a space that was not going to allow it.
No, and I mean, really what's important for the drivers to do now is they've got to form back up in the grid in the position in which they qualified, because of course they didn't complete a lap. And then just stay focused. Nobody really knows how long this is going to last, how long they're going to be sitting here waiting. I don't think it's going to be that long, though. Unfortunately, they can actually see down to that first corner where the recovery vehicles are. So they will have a pretty good idea of what's going on in terms of the recovery, and therefore an idea of how long. But they've just got to stay focused, get back in the zone, and not think about what happened before, just think about what happens from now on.
Now, of course, as the cars come back to the grid under these red flag conditions, Amanda, and you've been in this position previously as a racing driver, the cars are what's known as in parc ferme, effectively. So that means that none of the engineers, other than opening the door to the car, can actually do anything. So even on that first lap, if one of the drivers noticed something just a little bit out of kilter and they wanted an adjustment, it can't be done.
That's right. No, the cars are now in racing conditions, so they have to stay as they came out and how they started the race. So that's why you'll see drivers just sitting with their door open. But whereas before on the pit, on the grid, we saw all of the team, they were checking tyre pressures, checking the temperatures. That isn't going to be happening now. The cars are very much just going to stay as they are.
Disappointed to see. I could see from my left-hand side. Now, Peter Hunter, who Mark Werrell and Adam Weller described, had to do a bit of rally crossing, which of course is that loose driving Peter is well versed at. Unfortunately, I'm seeing his car being pushed into the pit lane, so perhaps that picked up a bit of damage.
Yeah. And we are missing a couple of cars as well, so I'm hoping very much that they may have got going, but what they, I think, are going to be doing, in fact, I can see the roof of one over the pit wall, they're going to be going back into the pits so that the mechanics can actually check, make sure that the cars are still safe, and then they'll be restarting the race from the pit lane.
That was my next question to you. Presumably, if those cars are deemed to be perfectly okay, they will be allowed to rejoin the race. However, it will have to be from the pit lane, won't it?
Exactly. So once all of these cars have started and they've made their way past the end of the first corner, then they're going to be allowed to follow on behind.
Okay, let's just take a look through and see who we've got left then remaining before we go back to racing again. Obviously, Gilbert Yates got away well and, of course, was unaware of what was going on behind him. Pranav Van Gala the same, and Andrew Morrow also. We can see here the Robert Rees car.
And you can see a bit of scuffing over here where he had that initial bit of contact right at the very beginning as well. Obviously, nothing too serious. Might affect his steering a little bit, but nothing that's going to actually stop him in the race.
And Robert Rees is in discussion with Sean Doyle, his driver coach, as we speak. And they talk not only in the open air, but also across their radio communication system as well. And you can see that there's quite an intense conversation going on between Sean and Robert Rees as well. So for Robert then, dare I say, perhaps a lucky escape.
Absolutely. And what I think just happened there is his driver coach came round to take a look at what the side of the car looked like. And I mean, it's not bad. You can just see the scuffing. Just to give Robert that little bit of reassurance.
Confidence.
Yeah, because of course you can't see from when you're sitting in the car, you have no idea whether bits are hanging off, whether there's any loose body work, whether there's any significant damage. So it's just reassuring to have a second pair of eyes say, no, everything's there, all the side splitters as it should be. So yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, we can see the recovery operation is underway, and of course here at Donington Park the recovery team will work as quickly and as safely as they can to get the cars recovered, and therefore we can go back to racing. Just while we have a moment in time, I'm going to see if I can have a word with Andrew's father, Philip, who is always good for a talk, and I know he won't mind, says he. I'll probably get told right off here. Philip Morrow, Andrew's father, of course. We were speaking on the grid initially when we first did our, Amanda and I did our grid walk, of course. Andrew celebrating his first win in the European season just a couple of weeks ago, which was brilliant to see and richly deserved. I think it's fair to say he's finding it difficult, isn't he, or more difficult to jump from the 296 car back into the 488 here in the UK.
Well, to use his expression this morning, as you know, we're farmers, and he said it was like getting into the tractor compared to the 296 because the car is just, it's chalk and cheese. The front end grip in the 296 is just way superior. The whole ride is just totally different, and he finds it hard. You know, 2 weekends ago he was in the 296 at Podium.
Yep.
2 seconds in his class. Last weekend he was up the hill in Goodwood, and here he's this morning. So it's hard to adapt, but he can do it.
He can do it, and he's proven that more than once. Listen, Philip, as a father, of course, you're always proud of your children. Just 3 years ago, Andrew hadn't raced a car. Now he's been taking cars up the hill at Goodwood. He's a champion. He has been winning races. I mean, what a development curve.
2 years and 3 months.
Okay, sorry.
It was actually April 22 after his Ready to Race programme, and he did well. And Francesco put a car in the grid. As I said, if you put a car in the grid, we'll put him in it, and it was unbelievable. And he was right away in with Lucky and Hans, etc., doing really well. And it was his first win here in 22. I can remember them coming into this last chicane here,
yes.
And he got up the inside of the two, and you know, he pushes. I think it's the fair thing to say. He keeps pushing, and that's why, you know, some of the races, though he doesn't get the fastest lap, he seems to make good progress in the race. Like out at Portimao, he started 12th, dropped into 14th. He was boxed in the second corner, finished up 5th overall, which is just, you know, incredible. He just keeps working away at it, but he's behind someone here who's very fast, and has to recognise that Gilbert is very quick and has been here for testing. I think it's one of the things he struggles with because of the pressure and time. He's not getting for the testing, which makes such a difference.
Yep.
Likewise here, whereas last weekend in Portimao, last minute he went and did testing, so it meant on the start of his 4-day weekend, he was there, the car was set, he was ready to go, which is what he spent this morning getting his car set here and getting brakes padded and etc. So it's all of that is what the 2 days puts the pressure on, plus the change in the car, and that's
what it's all about.
That's what he's dealing with.
Indeed. Well, he's dealing with it jolly well. I mean, his consistency, Amanda, is absolutely extraordinary, and it's testament to the Ferrari Challenge, isn't it, that 2 years, 3 months.
Absolutely.
2 years, 3 months ago, this guy had not driven a racing car, and now he is the current Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli UK champion, and not only that, he's a race winner in Europe as well.
Absolutely, indeed. It's remarkable stuff. So, yeah, as we're waiting still for the recovery to... I can see... Right, cars are now loaded, which is a good start. Of course, it's important to mention that these guys, the top three, so we've got Gilbert, Pranav and Andrew, they'd have almost been unaware of what happened because all the action that's caused this red flag happened behind them, so they won't have seen what's going on. So again, it can be a little bit disconcerting, you know, you don't quite, because you've got no idea what the circuit's going to be like, you've got no idea if there might be some oil, if there may be some slippery surface flags. You got no idea as you head down into that first corner. So even though it's great that they weren't part of the lap, part of the accident, they won't know what to expect on that first lap out.
Well, Donington Park here, Amanda, you've driven it a number of times. I haven't. I know it's a tricky circuit to get the best out of, and right now I think we're going to take a look at an onboard lap just to prove, perhaps, how challenging this Donington Park circuit is.
Approach Redgate corner, get all the way out to the left-hand side of the circuit, hard brake, down 2 gears to 4th, take the apex, take all of the curb on the exit of the corner. You then head flat out, down through the right-hand kink at Hollywood, and just feather the throttle to about 80% for the rest of the Craner curves, down towards the old hairpin, a hard brake, down to 5th gear, watch the exit curb, avoid running wide, and pick up the throttle as soon as you can as you shift up to 6th gear and up towards Schwantz corner. Take a late turn into the left-hander at Schwantz corner to make sure you're on the correct side of the circuit. Sweep your way through McLean's corner. You're down to 4th for that. Grab the apex, use the exit curve to get a good run up towards Coppice. Down to 4th. Stay over to the left. Keep the car settled. It's blind as you approach the first apex. You're in the middle of the circuit for the second. Shift up all the way to 6th gear as you head up to 240 miles an hour, 240 kilometres an hour, 150 miles an hour. Very hard brake, down to 3rd for Roberts. Compromise the first part of the chicane to nail the exit on the second part of the chicane. Get back on the throttle and you head over the start-finish line, and that's a 1.97 mile lap of the Donington Park National Circuit with the reigning champion, Andrew Morrow. So the cars lining up there on the grid, those cars that came in towards the pit lane, which was Gary Redmond's car, Darren Howell's car, and pushed off the grid Peter Hunter's car. I haven't seen any of those return to the circuit as yet, and now I can see Peter Hunter's car being pushed back into the garage. So it does look as though we may possibly have 4 cars, all of those that were involved in the incident, not able to restart, Adam, which is an enormous shame that will have dwindled the numbers slightly, but it does offer up opportunities for other drivers to maybe put in a stellar performance, and Steve Dobson for Dick Lovett-Swindon is one of those I've got my eye on now.
Yes, absolutely. For Steve, it's a golden opportunity. A lot of the drivers involved in that, a lot of the drivers that seemingly may have been excluded from the restart because of this, not excluded in a judiciary sense, but purely because it doesn't look like they will be taking the restart, are from Copa Shell. So for Steve Dobson, for Robert Rees, that could be a really, really exciting opportunity. Of the cars that went into the pit lane, I would suggest the one most likely to reappear, if possible, would be Darren Howell, but we'll wait and see whether or not that proves to be the case. We were talking, of course, as well about Lee Frost. We've spoken about him in qualifying as we get a look here at the diligent Donington marshals making their work. But for Lee Frost, we said in qualifying that it was his only time racing this Ferrari, or his first time in the Ferrari this weekend. But that's actually not true, because thinking back in the memory banks, Lee Frost drove a pre-Evo spec Ferrari 488 Challenge in British GT on a one-off with his mate Lucky Kira back in 2020. So he has a little bit of an understanding of the 488 at least.
I was probably there for that one, but I couldn't even recall that. They all blend into one. So just while we're waiting for our fantastic Donington Park marshals and circuit staff to finalise the clearing up, we managed to catch up earlier on this season with Mike Dewhurst, who represents Dick Lovett-Swindon, and try and get an idea as to what his background is and exactly how he's got involved in motorsport.
In terms of my racing background, when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I raced Formula TKM, mostly around Yorkshire in the Woolwell Club Championship and the Fullbeck Club Championships. Then did that until probably about 1994, racing the British Grand Prix, the British Super Prix a couple of times, and then pretty much retired, then focused on the career and working life. Had a little go at karting again in sort of 2010. Again in TKM, but TKM Clubman, they gave us the opportunity to take all the classic stuff out of the shed and run it again, so I did that for a season. I've had the good fortune to drive a Dallara Ferrari Formula 1 car in at the deep end, so first time I drove that was at the Goodwood Festival of Speed up the hill, so no pressure there to not make any mistakes. So yeah, ran that for one weekend there. And then did a few European demos at a couple of Grand Prix and drove that. So again, nice experience driving a fantastic car, V12 3.5 litre Ferrari engine. So really quick, really lightweight car, really good downforce. So a great experience. Other than that, a few demos, a couple of Group B rally cars that I've been out in, an RS200 and a Metro 6R4. So again, different, all challenging, interesting things to drive. And then and straight into the Ferrari Challenge. Well, I think I wanted something where it was the full package. So again, nice cars, prestigious cars, great events, great atmosphere, fantastic hospitality, a good family, good community feel around it. So again, it's extremely competitive. There's some really good drivers. It's competitive, but it still retains some element of being gentlemanly.
So a brilliant insight into Mike Dewhurst and the background that he has. I'm not sure whether his Dallara Ferrari car is an ex-Emanuele Pirro or ex-Alec Caffey car or something like that, trying to think back to who would have raced them in period. So just while we are waiting for confirmation as to when the race will get back underway, I think we're probably about 4 or 5 minutes away from it starting. Let's go back down to the grid and Dave Richardson.
Thank you very much. I'm down here in the garages. It's good to see that Darren and Mike are back here and in conversation with Amanda as we speak, and they're huddled in the garage there. And I could see you, Amanda, you were just sort of analysing the incident there and getting the drivers' perspectives into what happened and why I should have indicated left or why I should have indicated right. But what's the drivers' views?
Well, the drivers' views are that was just a racing incident. It was just a typical stunt.
Oh, come on. Let me interrupt you because, look,
This is a serious matter.
This man, Peter Hunter, who has not had the rub of the green, I think it's fair to say. You
Had the rubber summit.
yeah.
What is the relevance of this zebra?
Well, no, it's a clown show, this, isn't it? So I'm dressing like a clown. Because people can't
Of course.
drive.
Well,
I've just been over listening in to you guys. It's very hard to take you seriously, but we'll do our best. It just seems the consensus was that was a racing incident.
That was a clusterfuck, complete, like...
Use the language.
Sorry, yeah, that was, that was just stupid.
Racing.
Again, welcome to the circus.
well, of course, Peter Hunter, and apologies once again for the profanities, but you can understand how frustrated he is. Peter, of course, who's built a huge career of, sideways driving on the loose stuff in rallying and rallycross as well. Hugely successful. I think it was last year was his first year in circuit racing. It has, sometimes it hasn't always gone his way, but oftentimes it has gone his way as well. So he's enjoyed the spoils of success as well as the heartbreak of when things have gone wrong, Amanda. And I guess, as a racing driver, you have to take that on the chin and be prepared to accept the good and sometimes the bad.
You certainly do. Well, as we're shortly going to be heading towards the race start in about a minute and a half, it's very sad to confirm that, of course, Peter, Mike Dewhurst and Gary Redman are not going to be starting the race. All the cars have been retired and are now parked up, but the guys are going to be working hard to get them ready for tomorrow. So without further ado, I think we should probably hand over to the Tower of Power. I'm stealing your line.
Why is everyone having a go at me about Tower of Power? I mean, they are
We
two
love it.
powerful individuals in terms of broadcast commentary who you and I have spent many years in adulation of, and we're able to bring them to you here this weekend. That is Adam Weller and Mark Werrell.
Wow, there was a build-up if ever we needed one. So thank you to Amanda Abbott, and Dave Richardson was in the pit lane as well. And we look forward to getting this restart of the race underway. Say a few little gaps on the grid where we now know that Gary Redman, Mike Dewhurst, Darren Howell, I don't think Amanda mentioned, and Pete Hunter, those will be the 4 cars that were all eliminated in that race-stopping incident, which does wipe out 4 cars from Copa Shell.
It does, doesn't it? That is going to be an open goal potentially for Rees and Dobson. I don't know about adulation for many years from Dave Richardson. I think he was commentating before I was born, if we're being completely honest.
I suspect he probably was. I think I was as well.
97 for me. So.
2000 was my
there you go.
Yeah. So we've still got a few moments before we get the race underway. The John Deere tractor at the back is not eligible for Ferrari Challenge UK, and I think what's been happening there is the officials have just been looking at that liquid that was coming out of the car of Peter Hunter just to understand what it was. It looked like it was coolant. And is it still slippy? It's not evaporating. Coolant doesn't tend to evaporate. It tends to take a long time to evaporate, but they'll, typical Marshall's boot, rub your foot along it. Is it slippy? Yes, it is. Right, let's treat it and make sure that we soak up the moisture. If it's not, they'll let the cars go.
Yes, they've just confirmed that green flag postponed for another 5 minutes. So that means at the moment they're hoping to get these cars rolling at 4 o'clock. Really enjoyed hearing that piece as well from Mike Dewhurst. My first job when I arrived at Brands Hatch for the season opener was to confirm that he was the same Mike Dewhurst that owned the Ferrari-powered BMS Formula One car. Of course, a great history between Ferrari and BMS Scuderia Italia. Beyond the F1 project, they ran the 333 SP to great success in Europe. The likes of Enzo Calderari, Lillian Breiner racing those cars in period. And then the 550 as well, developed just down the road by ProDrive, I grant you, rather than the Ferrari factory. But drivers like Matteo Bobbi taking that to great success at the Spa 24 Hours. BMS, a big part of that Ferrari history, along with the likes of AF Corsa and JMB Racing.
Yeah, fantastic history, as is always the case with the Prancing Horse and Ferrari. And I've got to say, the SP333, I think one of the prettiest ever cars there was. I think 2 of the chassis were built by Ferrari. All the rest were built by Dallara, but there were 2 that Ferrari built.
Those are the earliest ones.
Of which one is for sale at the moment. I spotted it on social media earlier on this week. Right, so it looks as though we're not going to soak up whatever Peter Hunter put down there with the usual powder compound. I'm going to say cement dust. It's not. They don't use cement dust. But it's not the powder compound that's putting down. They are now putting down a chemical, and what that chemical does is it breaks down what's been deposited on the circuit and will then be flushed away. So you can see that they are at the moment jet washing the circuit, and that line of coolant that's been put down there by Peter Hunter. Now, he would have been blissfully unaware that, you know, he stopped where he was on the grid. That was when I spotted trickles of it coming out. He edged forward and I saw the trickles started to come forward again. And no pit members were allowed on the grid at that point, so he was ushered forward to his grid position. Then the marshals, understandably, then spotted it coming out of the back of the car. And as soon as they do that, they'd have informed Peter he'd have turned the engine off and known that he was probably going to end up retiring from this one. But inadvertently, blissfully unaware that would have been coming out of his car.
And it was a point that Amanda made down on the grid as well, you know, having that extra set of eyes to see that everything is all A-OK on the car. Peter hadn't got there yet to actually have anyone check over his car, so he was indeed completely caught unawares by that. We are anticipating a restart in the next few minutes. Of course, the team here at Donington Park working exceedingly hard to make sure we can get this race underway in as short of an order as possible. The Donington Park National Circuit, as you alluded to, a little under 2 miles completed in a little over a minute in these Ferrari 488 Challenge Evo machines. And looking forward futureward, I cannot wait to see what kind of times these drivers ring out of the 296 in the future.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the pole position time that Gilbert Yates set, it was a 1 minute 6.317. You mentioned it's a 2 mile track. You're doing it in a little over a minute. Well, it means his average speed across the whole piece, 107.43 miles per hour in qualifying. Of course, he went that little bit quicker in free practice 2, didn't he, where he set the fastest ever lap that anybody's ever done in a Ferrari Challenge car around here at Donington Park. He did a 1 minute 6.011. That is a whisker away from averaging 108 miles an hour, 107.93 miles per hour, taking into account all of the bits you have to brake for, and then accelerating back up to your terminal speed again.
Yeah, that would be a solid lap time average at a short oval or something of that nature. And yet we managed to do it here despite all of the braking zones. And he told me a 105 could be possible. So we'll keep an eye on that for qualifying tomorrow.
Well, earlier on down on the grid, Dave Richardson was catching up with Andrew Morrow's father about his development as a driver. We caught up with Andrew early on this season to gauge his thoughts on driver development.
2022 was my first time ever sitting in a race car. I think it was actually here at Oulton Park back in May 22 for the first round, and turning up on the Friday morning going, right, what's this all about? And we're thrown in the deep end and out in the track and did well that weekend, so it was good. So from I was no age, I was always encouraged at home, out in quads, buggies, anything with an engine, go-karts around the farm just for a bit of fun, nothing competitive. And my dad was a big petrol head too, so he had a few cars, and that's where really, I suppose, the Ferrari interest came. And then the opportunity came up to do my Ready to Race course to get my licence through Charles Hurst and Ferrari in UK here, and I went to Brands Hatch to do that, and that's where the journey started. My first year was fantastic. I never thought it was going to go as good as it did. First round here in Oulton Park, we got 2 fifth positions, which I was ecstatic with. But never did I think I'd go to the next round at Snetterton and get my first podium, never mind my first win. So it really just took off from there. And then first season, I managed to finish second overall, and it was close at the end, but lucky just got me in the last round at Silverstone. And then last year I won it overall, so it was 2 good years. Last weekend we were out in Mugello for the first round in the 296, and there were 77 cars in total, so the grid was just huge. Trying to find place to qualify, go out and practice, get a gap, but also at the race start, just try and keep out of trouble is a huge challenge. But it's a good challenge, and it keeps pushing you on, and you've got to keep the head down and keep focused. Sitting on the grid with some of these guys is just a bit surreal. You know, you're thinking 2 years ago I haven't sat in the car, and these guys have raced all their life, but it's a great experience and some really good drivers involved. We felt this year going to do Europe, as much as it's pushing us as a driver and where we want to be, just it doesn't have that same family feel, so we wanted to come along and do some of the rounds here just to still be part of the whole Ferrari Challenge UK family. For me, I've loved it, and it's really brought my driving skills on, and hopefully we'll continue to progress through the European Series as well.
Well, again, another fantastic insight from our reigning champion, Andrew Morrow there. And again, Adam, he used that word, didn't he? Family, the Ferrari family. So many drivers use that.
Yeah, it really is a global family. Some brilliant stories that you get each and every year. I think one of the best Ferrari Challenge stories globally this season came from the Japanese series, when the Suzuka round, the second Suzuka round, the Sunday race, was unfortunately red flagged. 2 of the drivers hopped on a plane to Venice to take part in the Ferrari Cavalcade, the kind of road trip across southern Europe, with, you know, these most incredible Ferraris, old and new. They had to choose between Ferrari racing and Ferrari road tripping on that day, which is a wonderful problem to have.
It is, yeah, a lovely problem to have. And I think Ali Mannering as well, that Amanda caught up with earlier on. I think she's been involved in several of those throughout Europe when she caught up with Ali and Jamie Unwin earlier.
And those events are so prestigious and so revered by Ferrari collectors, Ferrari owners. I know of people who have bought cars specifically to go do the cavalcade, which is incredible. Obviously, we heard there from Andrew Morrow about his experiences in Europe with the 296. He's now, of course, a race winner. He did that at Portimao a couple of weeks ago, as we heard on the pre-grid. The pre-grid, take 2. Looks like it's now over for our first Ferrari Challenge UK race of the weekend here.
It is, so off they go. Let's guide you through the grid again. Gilbert Yates sits there on pole position, and Pranav Vangala is alongside. Row 2 of the grid, Andrew Morrow is there, but there's a gap where we should have had our Copa Shell pole sitter, Gary Redmond, so here's an absentee from row number 2. Row 3 of the grid, on the inside of the 3rd row of the grid, Lee Frost is there, as is the car of Robert Rees. And row 4 of the grid, Mike Dewhurst is an absentee on the inside of the 4th row, but Steve Dobson, representing Dick Lovett-Swindon, is still there on the outside of row number 4. Row 5 of the grid, Darren Howell again is not able to take the restart, so Hamandra Pillai is on his own on the 5th row of the grid. And off the back of the grid, we know we have also lost Peter Hunter, representing Stratstone Manchester. So 4 cars down, sadly all 4 of them in Copa Shell. Just to familiarise yourself again, if the car has a red windscreen banner, then it is a Trofeo Pirelli car. If it has a yellow windscreen header to the sunstrip, then that car sits in Copa Shell. So the car's just threading their way out of McLean's corner and up towards Coppice corner. So let's have another go at getting race 7, round 4, underway. So the Ferrari safety car just leading them up towards the Roberts chicane. Remember, it's the red and the Dayglow car of the championship leader, Gilbert Yates, that lines up on pole position. The dark green car of Pranav Vangala that is alongside. We've still got the notification that it's slippy on the start-finish line, which all the drivers will have been made aware of on their car-to-driver communications or pit-to-car communications. Red lights are on the gantry, and as the lights go out now, it is going to be Gilbert Yates that leads the way, but Andrew Morrow is trying to draw himself alongside Pranav Vangala as they head up towards Redgate Corner. Can he squeeze through on the inside? Yes, he can. Pranav gives him room. Needs to be careful he's not forced wide on the exit. Pranav Vangala slips from second down into third position. And who's there in fourth? Lee Frost making his debut. And fifth place, off the back of the grid, is going to be Hamandra Pillai, the pink car, making really good progress.
Pillai with a good start indeed. Will be looking to try and salvage perhaps even an overall podium from this. Some of the obstacles that were between him and the rest of the Trofeo Pirelli runners, unfortunately not there. A lot of the Copa field not able to take this restart, but that really is in favour of the pick 19.
It really is. Brilliant start from Hamandra Pillai. He had to roll his sleeves up and get on with it, yeah, and was able to pick his way past Stephen Dobson, then pick his way past Robert Rees, who in the early stages of this one, his blue number 8 car leads what is the Copa Shell. Already though, Gilbert Yates in the lead of the race, just starting to pull away a little bit from Andrew Morrow. Over the start-finish line they'll come. Gilbert Yates chalks the first lap into the book. Andrew Morrow in second place. Pranav Vangala from Lee Frost and Hamandra Pillai. That's the top 5 at the moment. And then the 2 remaining cars in Copa Shell following the red flag incident that meant that 4 could not continue. Robert Rees leads that, and for him, this is the perfect opportunity to add to his championship tally and extend his championship lead in Copa Shell.
It really is, yes. That would really consolidate what is already a fairly strong advantage in the Copa Shell category. Of course, Mike Dewhurst was his closest competition and the only driver within 30 points of Robert Rees in the standings coming into this weekend. So this really is a golden opportunity for the driver of the number 8. Of course, up in Trofeo Pirelli land, though, there was just 1 point between Yates and Morrow at the top of the standings coming into this race. That point was the pole position point that Yates scored this morning with his fastest lap time. So it really is all to play for in Trofeo Pirelli.
Yeah, so for Robert Rees, he continues to lead Copa Shell, our overall race leader and the leader of Trofeo Pirelli, back over the start-finish line. Gilbert Yates was a second up the road from Andrew Morrow. He's now nearly a second and a half up the road from Andrew Morrow. As the first flying lap, he sets the fastest lap of the race so far, understandably the race leader, 1 minute 7.466. Now that's not a bad first flying lap, I would say, bearing in mind that the pole time was sort of heading towards a mid 1 minute 6. So tends to suggest that he's cracking on, but also tends to suggest that whilst there was a lot of fluid put down on the circuit, it's largely not affecting the lap times.
He would have been good enough, the third on the grid in qualifying that lap from Yates. That is seriously impressive pace. He really enjoys this Donington Park National Circuit. A point I want to raise in regard to Lee Frost. Yes, he has an iota of experience in a Ferrari Challenge car versus most of the rest of the field, but what he does have is general racing experience, including a lot of endurance racing. Now, does that mean that towards the end of this race, he might have a bit more tyre than the likes of Vangala and even Andrew Morrow up ahead?
Yeah, a 30-minute race for Lee Frost is almost like a little sprint race for him compared to some of the other things he's done. He's also got a lot of circuit knowledge, Lee Frost. I've seen him race here many a time around Donington Park, both national circuit and the full Grand Prix loop that we are not racing on this weekend. So, another new fastest lap, that time through. Gilbert Yates stretches the lead advantage by the best part of another second, not quite, about another 9/10 of a second, but it's 2.5 seconds now between himself and Andrew Morrow, who sits there in second position, who was caught a little bit by Pranav Vangala's third place car, the number 29 car representing HR Owen, a little bit closer to the Irishman that lies ahead. Lee Frost and Hamandra Pillai still completing the top 5 at the moment. Robert Rees still leading Copa Shell from Steve Dobson. And I was just doing a little bit of maths. You know, if Robert Rees were to pick up the 15 points for the race win in this one and got the fastest lap as well, that would extend his championship lead to 27 points, which means if he has a good result again tomorrow and maybe we don't quite get Mike Dewhurst where we need him to be, he could mathematically get very close to the championship.
35 points will be available to score at Silverstone 2 sets of 15 potentially for a win. Point for fastest lap, point for pole in each race, and then there's also an additional point for entering the event as well. So if if Robert Rees leaves this weekend with more than 35 points in his favour, yes, he could clinch it around early.
Yep, he could do. Yeah, we'll have to do the maths. That's not for today, that's for tomorrow. But we'll be keeping an eye on how the championship might pan out for Robert Rees and whether Mike Dewhurst can keep that championship alive. So out of the old hairpin, without question, Andrew Morrow is getting caught by Pranav Vangala. The gap from second to third as they head through Schwantz and up towards McLean's Corner was down to 3/4 of a second at the start of this lap, but Pranav Vangala was about another 1/10 of a second quicker through the first third of it. So he is edging ever closer to the reigning champion. And we've also got a brilliant fight going on for the two cars that are first and second in Copa-Shell at the moment. Now, it's Robert Rees that leads, but half a second behind him is going to be the car of Steve Dobson. Now, Pranav Vangala for second place. Is he going to sneak his way through on Andrew Morrow? He's trying hard in towards the Robert chicane. Takes a tighter line in, which might compromise his exit, and that will play into the hands of Andrew Morrow to hang on to second as they come over the start-finish line. And this squabbling for second and third is also playing beautifully into the hands of the race leader, Gilbert Yates. He's now 5.4 seconds up the road.
Red carpet firmly rolled for Gilbert Yates at the front of the order. Pranav Vangala making sure that Andrew Morrow has to do most of his driving through the mirrors at this stage. I think Robert Rees, the lap before last, might have been a bit of a compromised one. He was over a second off of his best in the race. That allowed Dobson to close in, but in general, Dobson is looking really good here. For a driver who's fairly new to wheel racing, it's invaluable that all he has to really do is focus on the car he wants to overtake. There's no one behind trying to make mad lunges, and that means he can focus in.
Yeah, his best result in Copa-Shell so far this season was in the second of the two races up in Cheshire at Alton Park, where he finished third of the Copa-Shell Drivers' Home. That is his first and only podium so far in Copa-Shell this season. So the race leader about to flash his way over the start-finish line. Brilliant battle still for second and third. Andrew Morrow again under pressure from Pranav Vangala. Flashing his lights is Pranav there in third place to try and give the reigning champion the hurry up. But that's not going to worry Andrew Morrow as he works his way over the start-finish line. And I think the reason Pranav is flashing his lights because he wants to get Andrew Morrow to push on a little bit more, because they are in danger, if they squabble, of getting caught by the fourth place car, number 98, in the hands of Lee Hurst, and by Hemandra Pillai, who aren't that far behind.
And again, I just wonder, they're having to defend, they're having to try, in the case of Pranav Vangala, having to lunge to the inside, taking a harsher angle into the corners, trying to get that little bit of extra out of the tyres to make sure they take as much corner speed as possible. My thought here is, well, does that again mean that Frost might end up with a better situation at the end of this half hour plus one lap? Could he seize the opportunity to be in amongst this scrap, make it a 3-car battle, if not a 4-car battle with Pillai by the end of the race? Certainly, though, Pranav Vangala is pushing. We saw him right on the edge there, and he's also looking very ambitious and very willing to make a move.
Yeah, I think he's just fallen away a shade more this time, however, from Andrew Morrow. So Gilbert Yates goes through. Andrew Morrow now under a bit more pressure from Pranav Vangala as Pranav gets a much better run coming out of Roberts, but he's on the outside line as they head up towards Redgate Corner, side by side. Andrew Morrow has the inside line, hangs on to it. Can Pranav Vangala get the undercut on the way out and onto the top of Hollywood? When he's trying to do so, but Andrew Morrow is wise to that and just positions his number 1 car to hang on to second place. Pranav Vangala is still there in third place, and still not really making enough inroads at the moment is Lee Frost, who that time through lapped 0.2 of a second slower than the cars that he's trying to hunt down that are squabbling over second and third.
Great racing from both parties, and really encouraging as well for Pranav Vangala. The fact that he's going to wheel with the reigning Ferrari Challenge UK Trofeo Pirelli champion, that proves his progression, his advancement as a driver. Jake Hill is a long-term friend and oft driver coach of Pranav, and I think it took a lot of encouraging to go, no, you can race, you can do this, you are fast enough. And more and more, I think Pranav Vangala is stacking up the evidence that Jake was right.
He's just a very humble man, Pranav Vangala, but he's very quick indeed. A brief puff of dust as they head out of the Roberts chicane. Pranav Vangala is not close enough this time as they head up towards the braking area for Redgate corner. You can see the nose of the two 488 Evo spec cars of both Andrew Morrow and Pranav Vangala both dive down in towards the tarmac at the same time. Pranav Vangala running a little bit wide there coming out of Redgate corner. He also ran wide up at McLean's and at Coppice on the previous lap, so just needs to be careful here that he doesn't go beyond the circuit limits. If he does, it'd be a black and white warning flag, and then if he doesn't heed that warning, it would become a 5-second penalty, which would really undo so much of the hard work that he's been doing to pressurise the reigning overall Ferrari Challenge UK champion. All of this now means that Gilbert Yates is now 8.7 seconds up the road in the lead of the race, with 20 minutes plus the extra lap remaining.
107.075, the best lap for Yates, which is an incredible lap time. That would have been enough for pole position in all but one race in the history of Ferrari Challenge UK here at Donington prior to this weekend. Would have been good enough for second on the grid today, only behind his own qualifying performance. Yates really has his eye in here. Initially at Brands Hatch, I think there was an adaptation process going from other GT machinery into the Ferrari, learning the nuances of the 488 Challenge Evo. He still had a good weekend there, of course, but as he gets more and more used to this car, he's getting better and better.
Yeah, and of course, Alton Park, the first of the two races there, he had an issue which meant that he couldn't see the checker flag. He was leading, though, when it happened, so, you know, you could potentially have added another win to his tally had the first race of Alton Park gone the correct way for him. So up towards Schwantz Curve and McLean's corner goes this brilliant battle still for second and for third position. Andrew Morrow having to work overtime to try and keep the aspirations of the green machine, the HRO in car of Pranav Vangala behind. Now, Andrew Morrow there, did he not quite hook up the apex through the first part of Coppice? Could he run wide on the exit? No, looks as though he's still just about done enough to keep Pranav Vangala behind. As over the start-finish line to conclude another lap comes Gilbert Yates, our race leader. And what is the gap looking like this time through between himself and Andrew Morrow stroke Pranav Vangala? It is going to be 9.1 seconds. You remember I said Pranav Vangala needed to be careful about track limits? Black and white warning flag for Pranav Vangala, car number 29.
Yes, has to be careful of that. We've seen him stray wide out of the final corner in particular. But Vangala is locked, loaded, zoned in on Andrew Morrow at the moment in this battle for second place. So hopefully he's seen the light display, the LED board that showed him he's got the black and white flag as he came past the start-finish line this time, has taken heed and just has to bear that in the back of his mind. Okay, can't push the envelope too far from here on out.
No, don't test the patience of the race officials. If he goes wide one more time beyond either the red and white painted curb or the white line, as the case may be, then potentially he'd pick up a 5-second penalty, which would be added to his race time. And at the moment, he is only 2.7 seconds up the road from Lee Frost, so he would lose a podium spot in reality. He dropped from third to fourth on corrected times, and I think he probably realises that. He'll have heard it over the radio, because on this lap it just looks as though he's eased his pace a little bit. He's just tried to control his enthusiasm, and it's a much tidier lap within the lines of the circuit from Pranav Vangala, which means that Andrew Morrow resides there in second place still, but he is now, what, nearly 8 tenths of a second up the road from Pranav Vangala.
Another track limits warning going to Yates then, so that's a concern for him. Turn 10. I believe that would be considered the final corner of the lap.
Roberts. Yeah, so Gilbert Yates was one of those that in free practice 1 and free practice 2 was understanding where the limits were, because 4 of his lap times in free practice 1 were disallowed because of track limits. 2 of them were disallowed in free practice 2, which is the right way to do it. Get them out of the way in free practice. That way you learn where you can and you can't exceed those limits.
In many ways, free practice is troubleshooting. It's where are the track limits? Where is the limit for this car? How much understeer or oversteer do I have with this current setup? How can I combat that? And of course, they've got the brilliant teams behind them here to make sure they can combat that as well. A lot of very wise and very large brains in the paddock to pick from.
And that's why so many drivers do a driver track walk, probably on the Friday evening when they arrived, once the circuit is closed for the day, and understand where the sensors are, because beyond the red and white painted curbs is where you get the green painted tarmac. There are sensors in various places around the track, and that's where you can't run wide, because at the sensors, take a picture of your car when you run over them. Robert Rees over the start-finish line. He still continues to lead Cooper Shell at this stage, the number 8 car, from Stephen Dobson in the number 74 car. 5.3 seconds to the good is Robert Rees in this one. And at the moment now, he can afford to just stroke the car home, really, just maintain the pace and the gap that he's got between himself and Stephen Dobson, and he is highly likely to enormously extend his championship aspirations. It would mean that at the moment he would be, what's that, 27 points north, if he sets the fastest lap, of Mike Dewhurst, and that is a very handy margin to have with 3 races left to go, one here at Donington Park, which will be tomorrow, and of course the 2 that take place at Silverstone. So 13 laps completed, 15 minutes plus the extra lap remain on the clock. Gilbert Yates has led everyone so far.
Robert Rees, of course, along with Andrew Morrow, held the Ferrari Challenge flag aloft at the Goodwood Festival of Speed last week. I think both of them had a great time, although as Andrew's father alluded to, he's found it a bit difficult with the continental travelling schedule, the multiple race cars that he's driving in the same season. So Andrew Morrow having to learn to adapt by hook or by crook this season. Impressed with the pace of Pillai across the race as well, I must say. Across free practice and qualifying, that 1 lap pace wasn't quite there, but he's keeping in step with 2nd, 3rd and 4th place. All drivers with more experience or more track time in general, and Pillai again showing the improvement curve that we always want to see in a first season.
Yeah, I had a quick word with Mikey Broadhurst, who is the driver coach for Hamandra Pillai, over the course of the lunch break, and just asking, why was he a little bit out of position come qualifying, as he runs very wide coming out of Coppice and raises the dust that time through. And the answer for Mikey Broadhurst was just one of those things, the car is fine, it's just that he was trying different things, and some of it was working, other bits weren't, and didn't quite knit it together in qualifying. So the focus was, we are where we are on the grid, we'll push forward in the race and get the head in the right space, and that's exactly what Hamandra Pillai has done. Up towards Redgate Corner he goes in the pink number 19 car, representing Jardine Colchester, the Malaysian driver, whose best result of the season so far has been 4 4th places. He's 5th at the moment.
There's the Frost car then. For today at least, we're expecting Lucky Kira back in the hot seat. This 98 car will become the 24 on Sunday here in Ferrari Challenge UK. Those of you who are long-time viewers of this series will remember Lucky, of course, 2-time champion in years gone by. A very welcome return expected tomorrow. But he is an absolute family man as well. He had his daughter's birthday to attend today, and so he called up an old mate and said, I trust you.
Yeah,
be careful.
Yeah, we've got a touch of frost today, but the weather forecast tomorrow means that, yes, unfortunately, there will be no frost tomorrow. Lucky Kira is back driving that car. It will be renumbered as well, so it'll be 24 tomorrow rather than 98 as it is today, which is Lee's regular number. So we're heading towards 12.5 minutes of the race still to go. 8.6 seconds is the lead advantage from Gilbert Yates back to Andrew Morrow. Pranav Vangala has done the right thing since receiving that black and white warning flag. He's eased his pace and stayed within the confines of the circuits. He's now dropped back to nearly 2.25 seconds just beyond from Andrew Morrow. He's still there in 3rd place, and 4th is the black car of Lee Frost heading down towards the old hairpin, but he's still pushing hard. He was a little bit wide coming out of Redgate Corner that time through. We ought to mention still leading Cooper Shell is Robert Rees, and 2nd in Cooper Shell is the number 74 car as it heads through Redgate Corner, Steve Dobson.
There is Dobson just heading through Hollywood and the Craner curves now. Such a challenge in any race car, but in a GT car like this, where the pace is more from the power than the aero, I must imagine that is really edge of seat. These cars have a lot of electronics, a lot of trickery that really helps the driver, gives the driver something to lean on. But I have to imagine the Craners are such an edge of seat in a car like this.
Oh, they must be amazing. Yeah, absolutely amazing. You could argue that if you're looking at 488s, that the GT3 car is an easier car to drive than the Challenge spec car, because yes, there's less aero on the Challenge spec cars. They also have more power. And of course, there's less toys to play with. You've only got the 4 different settings on traction and ABS that you can utilise, depending on when you want to kick in or not. So they are not easy cars to drive, and all of the drivers out there in Ferrari Challenge UK are doing a brilliant job in conjunction with their engineers and their driver coaches to get the very best out of the 670 brake horsepower and the V8 engine that they all have in the back of them. So Stephen Dobson back out of Redgate corner, heading down through the Craner curves, and no little jink of a brake light down through there, so you might lift off the throttle a little bit. He heads down towards the old hairpin, as over the start finish line now completing 17 laps goes our race leader Gilbert Yates.
Yates has been phenomenal in this race. He's currently on lap 18 then, with 10.5 minutes left to go, with already a 10-second advantage in any single make series. That is hugely impressive, and especially when the man directly behind you is the defending champion. That's a real statement of intent. Yates and Morrow, provided Morrow did the full season, he wasn't so sure at one time whether he'd do the full year. They always felt like they'd be the two we'd end up talking about, but I, for one, at Brands Hatch, the season opener, certainly didn't expect them to come into this weekend tied on points.
No, absolutely nothing to choose between them, and even now there's only 1 point between them as a result of that pole position for Gilbert Yates. Yes, if he stays where he is, he'd then extend that by a further 3 championship points, because he'd pick up 15 points for the race win compared to Andrew Morrow pick up the 12. However, you could argue that would go another further point, because Gilbert Yates would also pick up the extra point for fastest lap as well, so it'd be up to, what's there going to be, 5 championship points between the pair of them if they stay where they are and fastest lap doesn't change at the end of this one.
Hugely surmountable, though, that is, of course. All it would take for Andrew Morrow is, for instance, a win tomorrow and a third for Gilbert, and it would all be tied up again before you consider the fastest lap point. No matter how you shake it, almost any circumstance this weekend is going to lead to a nail-biter of a Trofeo Pirelli decider in Silverstone.
Yeah, it was a brilliant sort of final championship season in 2023 as well, when we were at Spa-Francorchamps for that one, and the championship really could have gone either way in both the Trofeo Pirelli and in Copa Shell as well. So let's hope that we keep both of those championships alive until the very final race, which will be at Silverstone, when we're there over the course of the 14th and 15th of September on the Grand Prix circuit there. 8.5 minutes just over to go, plus the extra lap that gets added thereafter. Lead advantage is 11.1 seconds between Gilbert Yates and Andrew Morrow. The dark green car of Pranav Vangala, the number 29 car representing HRO in, still sits there third quickest. Now, he was half a second quicker than Andrew Morrow last time through, so was that an off lap from Andrew Morrow? Yes, it was, I think, more than anything. A bit more drop off on that lap, so the gap second to third has come down a little bit, but that's probably just a case of Andrew Morrow now managing that gap, because the lap he's just completed was a much better one.
Yeah, all of the drivers a little bit off their best at this stage. Vangala still half a second slower than Morrow on that previous lap. Yates in the 11 car on screen then at the moment, coming to McLean's, and still on the edge there. 5 meters later, and that would have been at least a missed apex, really pushing on. And what you saw there as well was braking while making those steering adjustments as well, having to brake while going left, then trying to get the car right, and that's a challenge all of its own, isn't it? Making sure you get the car pointed the right way when you've got that S almost into the corner. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, try and brake in a straight line, get all your braking done and downshifting in a straight line where you can. If you try and do too many things at once, the car just doesn't like it. It doesn't like your inputs that you're doing. If you're trying to rotate the car and brake and downshift at the same time, it's difficult. So lots and lots of glowing brake discs from Gilbert Yates, who has not really eased his pace. He is lapping at a similar pace to those behind, so he's not really extending the lead advantage a great deal more for the moment, but 11.5, nearly 11.6 seconds clearly is enough now for him just to pace this car home and try and see if he can scoop up for him what would be win number 3 of the championship season, to back up the wins that he took at Alton Park and at Snetterton. But amazingly for Gilbert Yates, this would be the first time this season that he's won the first race of the weekend. He's always won in the second race. There you go. Can't keep a pattern, unfortunately, for those of us who like numbers. But yeah, it would be a well-deserved victory on this occasion for Gilbert if he can take it on the Saturday. And a real statement of intent for the remaining 3 races if he can get there as well. Still really testing the limits through Roberts on both apexes and then also on corner exit.
Yeah, so right beyond the curb line there, onto the green painted tarmac, and then making sure he gets the car all the way over to the left-hand side on the approach in towards Redgate Corner. There's a bit of a wiggle midway through Roberts as well, also for the car in 3rd place, which was Pranav Vangala, who either had a little bit of turning oversteer or got on the throttle a little bit earlier, or the change of direction was a bit too aggressive, because his car all of a sudden just started to squirm around, and the fantastic Pirelli tyres just reminding him that there's only so much punishment that they can take in the Ferrari Challenge UK. So it's still Yates from Morrow from Vangala. I do fear that the car in 4th place, Lee Frost, has picked up a penalty for transgressing the circuit limits, which would be a 5-second penalty, I suspect, which means that on corrected times he would still remain 4th, because at the moment he is 5 3/4 seconds up the road from Hamandra Pillai, and confirmation on our timing screens now. Yes, 5-second penalty for car number 98, so Lee Frost, even on corrected times, just about hangs on to 4th.
And that's a shame, because he was 0.8 of a second quicker than Vangala on the previous lap. I grant you 3.1 seconds was the gap as well, but it was doable. There was something there if Vangala continued to start to struggle a little bit for grip on the rear axle. But that 5-second penalty means that even if Frost does close in, it's probably not going to show on the final classification.
No, so over the start-finish line goes number 98, Lee Frost, still hot in pursuit on the road, at least, of Pranav Vangala. The dark green car just leading the black car, so the HRO in machine still just ahead of the Grey Paul Birmingham car. Grey Paul Birmingham, as you mentioned earlier on, have been very, very successful as the team's champion. Was it 3 times now they've been the team's champions? Dick Lovett Swindon were leading that by 5 championship points. They were on 100 coming into this weekend, with Charles Hurst 2nd in the team's category on 95, and 3rd was HRO in. So that's the team's category. As over the start-finish line comes Robert Rees in the blue number 8 machine, still continuing to lead Copa Shell from Stuart Dobson, and comfortably leading it now. He's built up the best part of a 7.5 second advantage, and could well be on for course for his 3rd win in Copa Shell this season.
Yeah, I think some good race management from Robert Rees. He extended that gap out to 7 seconds about 5 or 6 laps ago, and has just kept it there ever since. Knows that he doesn't need to do any more than this. Who knows, he might be even thinking so far ahead as to think, well, these could be my FP1 tyres for Silverstone if I keep them relatively up to scratch. I won't take too much energy out of them. Now, if you are the coach for Hamandra Pillai, what you're going to be saying at the moment is push, 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 because of course Frost has that 5-second penalty. Pillai is 7.1 seconds back from him. However, that gap has extended by a second on the previous tour of the Donington Park National Circuit. So for now, Pillai is out of range to make up a position, move himself up to 4th with the 98 car's penalty. But if he can find a little bit more speed towards the end, maybe it's doable.
Yeah, and their driver coaches will be on the radio saying exactly that. For Hamandra Pillai, it'll be Mikey Broadhurst saying, crack on, you've got to keep pushing. You need to catch Lee Frost and get within 5 seconds off him. And in contrast to that, then it will be Ewan Hankey that will be on the road to Lee Frost saying, push, 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 push. You've got to keep that gap. So up towards Redgate Corner, onto lap number 25 goes Gilbert Yates. 2.5 minutes still remain on the clock, plus the extra lap that we're going to have thereafter. So we should be able to get to, what, 28 laps probably out of this one? Maybe even 29 laps, depending on how quickly they keep on cracking on around the circuit. But for Gilbert Yates, all of the hard work was done in the early stages. He's built a substantive gap. 13 seconds is the lead advantage. So he really can now afford to just wind things back a little bit, drive round at 98%, drive round at 95%, and surely he's on course for win number 3 of the season.
You've done a lot of racing in various things over the years. Where's the danger percentage? Where does it become a bit too relaxed if you maybe start to slip into mistakes?
Well, you're asking somebody that's not driven a Ferrari Challenge car and something substantively less powerful than that. The difficulty is if you don't stay on it all the time and you're at 100%, then you're not fully focused. So you can only wind it back a few percent before you then start to not concentrate properly, and that's where you make mistakes. And then because you've slowed down and then made a mistake, it exacerbates the problem.
I've wrapped cars around trees in the virtual world doing exactly that. So it is still extremely close. Unfortunately, between Van Gala and Frost, I think Frost has been closing in. But unfortunately, of course, that penalty means that it isn't going to be a battle for position even if he did somehow make up that gap, the gap down 0.3 on the previous lap. Does bode well, though, for tomorrow. That car is clearly, we talked about it, the 2022 winning car, clearly still just as good back out of the mothballs, and that means that 2022 champion Lucky Kira could be a real threat come Sunday.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how Lucky Kira gets on in that, as it is 98 car for today. It will be rebadged and renumbered as the number 24 car for tomorrow when Lucky takes over fully. So Gilbert Yates comfortably leading the way. The reigning champion, number 1 Andrew Morrow, is the best part of the whole length of the straight from Coppice Corner down towards Roberts Away. And for Gilbert Yates, what has been a fairly quiet race might just get slightly busier at the moment, because he's shortly about to put a lap on the car that's currently second of the Copa Shell cars, which is Steve Dobson, who will hopefully see the blue flags and the blue LED boards and move out of harm's way for the race leader. But I suppose for Gilbert Yates, he can afford to be compromised a little bit by the traffic because he's built the gap.
Exactly right. He has the room. It's much like his qualifying performance this morning. He set his eventual pole time, I think, 6 minutes into the half-hour-long qualifying session, and in much the same vein, within 5 or 6 laps of this restarted race commencing, he had done all of the groundwork and then some. Morrow no longer had sight of the red day-glow yellow machine. Yates just coming up on the traffic now, heading down the exhibition straight on what will be the penultimate lap, of course. The clock has hit 0. That means just one more tour to go from here.
Yeah, well, for the final podium spot on the road, at least, when we ignore the corrected times that are going to take place, Pranav Van Gala has pretty much been caught by Lee Frost now, but remember, the car in 4th place, number 98, has that 5-second penalty as a result of the track limits earlier on. So Gilbert Yates over the start-finish line, 27 laps completed. We're going to get 28 out of this one as he heads through Redgate Corner for the final time at racing speed, charges his way down through Hollywood, where the circuit really starts to plunge away down through the circuit, and you can tell that he's worked hard, as have the car, as has the tyres, because he's now just starting to apply a little bit of brake midway through the Crater curves rather than just lifting off the throttle as they were doing earlier on. Surely, Adam, this has been a perfect performance, has it not, from Gilbert?
It's about what he would have hoped for when he drove into the paddock this morning, I'm sure. Well, actually, I don't know if that's true. Gilbert strikes me as the kind of racer that likes a bit of wheel-to-wheel action, but it has been about as stress-free and about as, well, poised, I suppose, as any race win we've seen in recent history here in Ferrari Challenge UK.
So it's been the perfect start to the weekend. He was fastest in pre-practice 1, fastest in pre-practice 2. He qualified on pole position because he was fastest in qualifying. Gilbert Yates now is on course to scoop up the top spoils in round 4 of the 2024 Ferrari Challenge UK, the 7th race of the season, his 3rd win of the championship season in dominant fashion. Andrew Morrow is going to finish in 2nd position as the reigning champion, and 3rd place should be the number 29 car of Pranav Van Gala, who was pushing really hard in the early stages but was forewarned about track limits and therefore just eased things off a little bit. Lee Frost comes through to finish 4th on the road and should maintain that 4th place because he is more than 5 seconds up the road from Hamandra Pillai, who comes through now to finish 5th. Even on corrected times, he was still 3.4 seconds adrift of Lee Frost. And then we need to wait the arrival of the next car over the start-finish line, which will be a 4-time winner now in Copa Shell so far this season, and still keeps up this brilliant string of either having finished 1st or 2nd in Copa Shell all year. Robert Rees is on course to scoop up a good haul of points here, in stark contrast to his main championship rival Mike Dewhurst, who of course was involved in that race-stopping incident at the start and therefore was not able to take the restart. So that's now a 27-point gap in Copa Shell for Robert Rees. He'll be delighted with that. Mike Dobson should be next through. So Robert Rees, really fortunate, you could argue, with the contact at the start where Pranav Van Gala and himself got together. Lucky to not get tangled up in the other incident, but just did what he needed to do come the race.
And also for Steve Dobson, who has already crossed the line, of course, second in Coupachel. I believe he'll be elevated from 5th in the standings to 3rd in the standings, ahead of Gary Redman. That will be a big jump for Dobson.
Not quite, probably, because of Gary Redman's extra point for pole position. It will probably end up being on exactly the same points, Willie, something like that. I think they'll be tied, won't they? So in towards the pit lane, the drivers thread their way at the end of the first of 2 races that we've got for them this weekend. So well done to our Trofeo Pirelli winner, well done to our Coupachel winner. There is Gilbert Yates being embraced by the team, and he looks rather pleased with that one, and rightly so, because he really has set the pace in all of the sessions that we've seen so far today. And for the blue machine in the hands of Robert Rees, the number 8 car representing Dick Lovett-Swindon, he'll be more than pleased that it's another win in Coupachel for him. So Andrew Morrow out of the car and chatting to driver coach Johnny Kane, who certainly knows a thing or two about GT and endurance racing as well, Adam.
Very much so, yes. GT and prototype endurance racing and just about every other discipline of racing you can imagine. Down in the pits, though, let's go down to Amanda.
Thank you very much. Well, wow, Gilbert, that was dominant from start to finish. And when you just got out of the car, then I heard a real whoop from you. That just, normally you're so cool, calm and collected, but that really gave us an indication of just what this meant to you.
Yeah, that meant a lot, and the team's been complaining because I don't celebrate. No, but that did mean a lot because it was just bringing it all together and doing sort of my perfect laps all weekend, and I really like this track, so I expect a lot from myself and the team. They knew what I could deliver, so yeah.
Well, listen, it was, as I say, a fantastic performance. What was it like when you had the red flag? Because obviously you guys weren't involved, so you didn't see what happened.
Absolutely horrible, because I had a great lead and a great start, and I had to do it all over again, so it was just stressful. And then to sit for like 20 minutes in the heat. It's really warm in there, so yeah, it was tough.
Do you get any indication of what Redgate's going to be like when you go in? Did your driver coach tell you?
They just tell you there's dust on the road, they're cleaning up oil and water and stuff, but you don't know until you do your warm-up lap. You get one go at it, and then it's like, do I go flat here or do I wait? So I just went for it and hope for the best.
Well, listen, you are now officially leading the championship. That must have a good ring to it.
It does, it's very good. Yeah, it's really good.
Gilbert, congratulations. Trofeo Pirelli winner here at Donington for the first race. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Good to hear from our race winner there, Gilbert Yates. So let's confirm the results for you then. Gilbert Yates, after 28 laps of racing, claims the win by nearly 14.2 seconds in the end from Andrew Morrow, who finished in 2nd place, and Pranav Vangala was there in 3rd. Lee Frost was in 4th position, despite that 5-second penalty for track limits. Hamandra Pillai finished in 5th place. 6th, and the win in Coupachel went the way of Robert Rees. And Steve Dobson finished in 7th place. He was the only car off the lead lap. I say, sadly, we lost 4 cars with that initial start, which took out Gary Redman, took out Mike Dewhurst, Darren Howell and Peter Hunter, all unable to take the restart. So now that we've completed our first race of the weekend, let's look back at some of the highlights from the race we've just seen. Round 4, race 7 of the 2024 Championship. Lights went out for the first time and up towards Redgate Corner. Robert Rees was looking to try and make progress, but contact further back took out Gary Redman, took out Darren Howell, took out Mike Dewhurst, and also took out Peter Hunter. After a delay, we got the restart underway, and it was Gilbert Yates that picked up the lead of the race. Andrew Morrow sneaking up the inside of Pranav Vangala to pick up 2nd place, and a good fight going on between Lee Frost and the hard-charging Hamandra Pillai off the back of the grid would be up to 5th at the end of the first lap of the race. Pranav Vangala had a few attempts to try and unpick 2nd place from Andrew Morrow. One was at Roberts, the other one was up at Redgate Corner. Neither were to be, and then a black and white warning flag for track limits would mean that he probably just needed to ease his pace a little bit. And as a result of that, he would ultimately just drop further away from the reigning champion. In Coupachel, Robert Rees and Steve Dobson were having a good little squabble for the lead in the early stages. Steve Dobson would eventually have to settle for 2nd, and Robert Rees would be through to further extend his lead in Coupachel and pick up his 4th win of the championship season. Lee Frost made a brilliant debut in Ferrari Challenge. They might have picked up a 5-second penalty. Had it not have been for that, he could well have finished on the overall podium. But it was a brilliant first of 2 races here at Donington Park on the national circuit. Gilbert Yates scooping up his 3rd win of the championship season. And as we heard from Miranda a few moments ago, that now firmly puts him into the lead of the championship standings. Not by a great deal still, but it's all could be very important come the end of the 2024 season. Let's go back to the pit lane and Amanda for some further reaction.
I do indeed. I've now managed to catch up with our Copa Shell winner, Robert Rees. Robert, hello. When I spoke to you after qualifying and I was like, what's happened? You know, you're not... I did say you normally end up having a solid race though, and look, you did.
We did have a solid race, and it was a strange race. Probably one of the hardest that I've done because there were so few of us in it, and it was just strange. And
it's hard.
Really hard push.
Yeah, also hard, I think, sometimes to keep your momentum when there's nothing around you and you're not being pushed. But first of all, tell me about the very start, because you had a little moment where you got a bit of air under you.
Yeah, we had a really good start, and it just came as a bit of a surprise because outside edge, and the car that I was going past didn't see me. But, you know, we managed it, and it was all okay. And then, obviously, there was an incident behind which red flagged it for us and brought us back to the grid. And I was unaware of that. So, and then the race took on a whole new format at that point in time.
Yeah, there was a lot of teeth sucking going on when we saw you airborne, but glad that you at least got to carry on. But you say, one of your toughest races, do you think?
Sure, absolutely. One of the toughest that I've been in because you're challenging yourself. Yeah. And it's really hard, as you mentioned, just to keep pushing yourself. And Steve's a great companion of mine, so he's pushing me along as well, which is absolutely fantastic. And I'm really pleased for Steve.
Well, listen, congratulations to you. You are the Copa Shell winner of today. Let's see what I'll quantify that. Let's see what happens tomorrow. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And a round of applause.
So nice to hear from Robert Rees down there. And interesting to say, Adam, despite the fact that we had depleted number of Copa Shell cars because of that red flag incident, it's saying one of the hardest races because, you know, as ever as a racing driver, you're competing against yourself before you're competing against anybody else.
Well, I said for Stephen Dobson it was great initially when he was right behind Robert Rees because obviously he could solely focus on trying to find a way past Robert. That didn't come to pass. But for Robert Rees, yes, it was a very hard race because, you know, it wasn't so much that he was racing himself, but he was having to, you know, purely think about staying within the line, staying, you know, consistent and everything else. And that is so hard to do when you effectively don't have any backdrop to contend with.
Gilbert Yates this weekend. Free practice 1 was 1.6 seconds quicker than anybody else. Free practice 2 was 1.25 seconds quicker than anybody. Qualifying was 1.1 seconds quicker than anybody. Gets the fastest lap of the race and is 3/4 of a second quicker than anybody. Impressive stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he said he liked the place, but I didn't think it was worth quite that much.
So that's the drivers who are all leaving their cars. Let's go down to Dave Richardson and the podium.
Thank you so much, Mark. Here we are then, time for the podium. Trofeo Pirelli, first of all, of course, after race 1 here at Donington Park. So, in reverse order, please welcome to the podium, taking P3, here comes Pranav Vangala. Well done, Pranav. P2 then, the second step of the podium, here is Andrew Morrow. And a dominant drive to the top step of the podium. Here comes Gilbert Yates. And of course, our dealer is represented as well by Charles Hurst. Trophies today will be presented by Ferrari factory driver and all-round good chap, James Collado here. First of all, makes the trophy presentation to Pranav Vangala for P3. The really rather lovely P2 trophy goes to Andrew Morrow. And critically for Gilbert, the trophy that says P1. And of course, also, Gilbert receives 2 trophies because he gets the Pirelli P0 trophy as well. And not to forget, of course, the Copa Teams trophy, which is going the way of Charles Hurst dealer, which James will also present to the dealership. And so with the trophies presented, we ask you gentlemen to smile, please. We all get together for the photographs of our Trofeo Pirelli Podium. Race 1 here at Donington Park. Big smiles all round. Gilbert, Andrew and Pranav Vangala then. Our Trofeo Pirelli stars here at Donington Park. Ferrari Challenge UK. Now it's time for the champagne. As I try to exit stage behind. Engaged reverse quicker than a quick thing, I can tell you. So we'll get the podium cleared up and stay with us then whilst we do that, because of course very quickly we'll be going to our Copa Shell podium. Of course, I remind you, qualifying to come tomorrow to set the grid for race 2, which will come tomorrow as well. Working very efficiently. Well done, Claudio. Let's get on with our Copa Shell podium then. And taking P2, please give it up for Steve Dobson. Steve, whose fan club is in attendance this afternoon. And taking the top step on the podium, Robert Rees. So the only 2 drivers on the Shell podium. And let's welcome also a representative from Dick Love at Swindon. Well done. The tallest man, and just by way of honour today, can stand on P3. What about that? Once again, we call upon Ferrari factory driver James Collado to make the trophy presentations. First of all, to Steve. Steve, debut year in the Ferrari Challenge. What a great job he is doing. Well done, Steve. And Robert Rees receives the race winner's trophy. And, of course, the Copa Team Trophy will go the way of Dick Lovett Swindon to add to the burgeoning mantelpiece of Dick Lovett Swindon. So there we have it then. Our drivers all will clamber together on the top step of the podium, complete with trophy. And Dick Lovett represented as well. And then Dick Lovett will leave the podium, and now just the top 2 drivers, of course. It'll all be a different story tomorrow. Robert Rees and Steve Dobson there, really enjoying their time on the podium. Who is going to win the champagne race? My money's on Dobson. It was a dead heat, an absolute dead heat. Well done to both our Copa Shell drivers. And on that note, we cross back to Mark Werrell.
Thank you very much, Dave. Yeah, great to see the celebrations on the podium and the 2 Dick Lovett Swindon teammates busy having their own individual champagne fight. So now that we've had our race for today, let's try and pick up on what the championship standings look like in the 2 individual categories that we have. Trofeo Pirelli, Gilbert Yates now has a 5-point gap. He's on 87 points, leading the championship. Andrew Morrow remains second now, but is on 82, with Pranav Vangala a further 12 points adrift on 70 points. Amanda Pillai is there in 4th. Tom Fleming, who only raced in the opening round at Brands Hatch, is there in 5th. And then it's John Dillon, AJ Litt, and Lee Frost, having his first weekend of racing, of course, picks up his first few championship points. He's there in 8th place. That is Trofeo Pirelli. Now let's have a look at Copa Shell. With the exploits of Robert Rees in that race, he now extends his championship lead, as I mentioned during commentary, up to 27 championship points. Mike Dewhurst is there in 2nd place, and Steve Dobson is up to 3rd. Is tied on points with Gary Redmond, but has had a 2nd place, whereas Gary hasn't, so he moves ahead of him purely on the countback. Gary Redmond's there in 4th, Peter Hunter is there in 5th, and Darren Howell is there in 6th position. And that's it for the day here at Donington Park. The skies are looking slightly greyer than they've done earlier on today. Rain is forecast for this evening, but hopefully when we come back to you tomorrow for qualifying at 10:30 in the morning, our race is scheduled to go green with the green flag lap for the 8th race of the season at around about 2:30. Hopefully we'll have some bright skies for you. So from Dave Richardson and Amanda Abbott down there in the pit lane, from Adam Weller and myself, Mark Werrell, up here in the commentary box, and everybody here at Ferrari Challenge UK at Donington Park, thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you tomorrow. Goodbye.